Hello everyone, my name is Cutellic and I'm a trained architect. I'm currently doing a PhD and a fellowship at the Institute of Technology for Architecture as the chair of computer-aided architectural design at ETH Zurich. So while the topic of research is to investigate and implement paradigms used in brain-computer interfaces mostly, it is also trying to address architectural potentials, and more precisely in what I will show you today about modeling through one of the simple experiments I'm conducting through this research. So hopefully this presentation will not be too long. Just a quick word. Prior to this research, which started around 2 years ago now, I started to collaborate out of curiosity with a French neuroscientist called Fabien Lotte from INRIA in Bordeaux, France, to try to understand, first of all, what are BCIs and how they are used, what are their techniques, their paradigms and challenges. And so together we started to do workshops with architecture students in Paris to understand that and to have a first kind of introductory collaboration altogether. And we started to, through those workshops, to make some kind of modeling exercises embedding feedback such as moving, stacking blocks in 3D by the help of motor imagery, for example, or selecting shapes by the use of event-related potentials. And so this led to two short and modest papers there, and further architectural interest later on the use of those ERPs, which eventually led to this present research. So, no. Block here. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. So now this experiment I will show you is about the generation of shapes and their articulation in time using a gaze-dependent EEG-based brain-computer interface for the acquisition of neural patterns related to the discrimination of visual events at fast pace. So as EEG-related technologies become more and more affordable and accessible these days, they allow for non-invasive and rapid practical experiments such as these ones out of the control environment of the lab. But even though one of the obvious trade-offs is a decreased accuracy and resolution, eventually those are the devices we have to deal with, and eventually if it works for this, it can only get better later on. So this was the starting point. And so just a few details about the data acquisition. So this is one of the BCI I designed myself to run those experiments, and also as an exercise to try to understand the technical challenges with such approach. So it is mostly using open BCI boards, sampling at 125 Hertz, with 16 channels only, and mounted on a custom headset, as you can see here, and including LiPo batteries and more practical electrode placement net to ease the experiment. According to this, and assuming the amount of noise we get out of this, so the signals are then filtered with an 8th order bandpass filter with low and high cutoff frequency from 0.1 to 20 Hertz, so that's quite drastic, and they are later on normalized to zero mean and unit variance for training. And that's given that the only ERP I'm looking at to this experiment is a large P300 in a rough time window of 660 milliseconds onset. So now about the experiment. So here you have a short preview of the beginning of a recording session, which is basically iterating in a closed loop on the evolution of a shape rendered with a simple Marchik-Kuhn algorithm. So that's very blobby. But that's mostly to provide also a smoother transition between states and ease also the visual discrimination. But so before jumping into the experiments, I would like to introduce the paradigm I'm working with, and it's implemented here to study modeling. In a typical case, and a more simple one called the speller, and I just wanted to spend a few seconds on that, since maybe not everyone in the audience can refer to that. So typically, a speller is used for communication, mostly with locked-in person who cannot verbally communicate, but still through visual discrimination can form words. So the way it works is that through visual attention on focusing 1 second at a time on a character, the flashing of one row or one column containing this particular character help to train a classifier to recognize a neural phenomena and event related potential discriminating this particular character being flashed or being contained in this flash. So that became very interesting to me as I got introduced to visual discrimination in a very discrete set of time slices, and also it would also be a very interesting paradigm to introduce for generative design that way. So one of the other challenges I got introduced to and I'm currently working with is also the fact that the challenge of the messiness of EEG data, especially with this kind of devices, but also some kind of feature like the non-stationarity of the signals, which can vary greatly, not only from one person to another, but from one session to another. And that's when I got introduced to learning models such as ensemble methods, where basically instead of training for on one specific model or for one specific word, we can train through several sessions for several words and then create an ensemble of those classifiers. And that way gather a stronger ensemble, a stronger method, which is voting for the most probable event-related potential, found in such signals. So back to this experiment. So from the idea of spelling words through the visual discrimination of characters, the question now was, can we abstract this model to discriminate shapes in a more general fashion? So that's the intent here. So here is one of the running sessions when you see an online discrimination for participating to the generation of a shape by applying a similar paradigm, an ensemble methods. So reading only the 16 channels, which you can see below, just to make clear the kind of correlation we are making here. So at first, the way new solutions are proposed is to generate around a previous state a random uniform spherical distribution of tokens of those possible new states. and presented in the following fashion. So more explicitly, the kind of paradigm I'm trying to derive from a speller here is the oddball paradigm in a rapid serial visual presentation. And just quickly, an oddball paradigm is also a great candidate for some experiments in generative design because it shares two things, a serial way to approach time sequences and also a condition which is a self-similarity between each stimulus presented. So basically, the oddball, which is the pink ball, introduced between the white ones is because it has a different features than the others, supposedly could trigger an event-related potential. And this is also the way it is implemented for this kind of speller I was talking about before. So now for this kind of experiment, and also because we need time to generate those tokens in between, there is a kind of adaptation where if you look at the bottom of the slide now, you start with an initial state, then you generate a certain amount of tokens and you propose as a stimulus to be discriminated within an oddball paradigm. And then those new states are become, then one selected, one discriminated token become a new state, etc., etc. And then from this kind of, oops, sorry. So let me go back. Yeah, so then from this kind of model, one can start to develop different kind of rendering, shader to states, actually the limitations of such discriminative capacities, such as implementing color differentiations between new evolving states, or working only with the boundary of a shape, or even working with frequency patterns. Try to define these limits and see how far we can go with that. So going back to the ensemble method I was mentioning before, so one can try to train similarly a classifier on visual discrimination of a single person over several sessions for a specific generative context. But even so, we have generalized a bit more the discrimination. It does not provide much more insight for modeling that way. So one can be tempted then to start to implement more restrictive solution space or some kind of design rules in a generative way. We could even talk about grammars, or we can start to then try to keep the solution space a bit more open and start to talk, instead of design rules, of design beliefs, meaning that something can be modulated and modified through time. And so it means that through that, by involving something which is slowly going towards more and more the modeling of architectural artifacts with some still highly generalized and simplified design beliefs, such as, for example, the cumulative verticality, if we want to go towards a column-like belief, or something which slowly bends as an arch, or if we want to go, if we want to extend this belief, we can also bend it in another dimension and have something which looks like a dome-like belief. And it happens that if we go that way and we train ensemble methods that way, we tend towards something which becomes a bit more interesting for architectural modeling that way. But still, we are still talking about shapes. So one of the next step then is to, instead of working with one shape, trying to implement this idea of design belief and training of ensemble methods with parts and discriminate how they assemble together, which is much more closer to an architectural modeling approach. It's how to deal with parts and how to. Okay, I will cut short. Just a few more seconds. So how to deal with parts and how to articulate them. Okay. So this is an experiment which is actually being finished. So here you see, for example, one of the way I use to generate those tokens of how parts to check if they collide, if they fall on the ground, etc. And if everything is fine, then they are proposed as new tokens to be discriminated and slowly form then this visual. So here you see those visual stimuli to be discriminated. I don't have conclusions on this experiment yet, as they are being wrapped up. But they are due soon for a publication. So if you're interested to read about the results of those experiments, they will be available soon. And please don't hesitate to send feedbacks, even so critical. That would be very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
I'm afraid we have to move on. If you have any questions to ask Pierre, you can do so at lunch. I think would be the best time. Thank you very much. Do you have? Yeah. There we go. Thank you.